You know, another advantage, well, it's the same advantage of being around a long time. You discover people that, or you recognize people you haven't seen for a long time. But I see this guy a lot. I've so liked being able to bring some people I really like a lot to the rest of the world. And Paul Nugent is one of those people. You know, we're dealing with this larger reality.
Can you have this on your time, not my time?
I get a minute. Don't you think I talk more than a minute? Yeah. Okay. So the only thing I really do want to say about him is that he is going to give you his kind of story that has to do with the larger reality and his contact with it. But whenever I hear Paul talk, it just moves me. This is going to sound funny. It sounds like me. So, you know, me at my best, me when I'm really smart and when I really am, you know, delivering how it is and how it needs to be. So that's your challenge.
Yeah, you're setting me up. You're setting me up. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Suzanne. Somebody who's already been referenced here a couple of times, at least today, was the late Christian cosmologist Thomas Berry, who quite famously said, to tell the story of anything, you have to tell the story of everything. And I've literally got about 10 minutes. And I'm going to use, well, I could use 9 minutes of those thanking Suzanne for her courage, for her commitment, for her bravery, for her passion against all obstacles that have been thrown at her, particularly by TED and TEDx, to put on this conference. So thank you so much, Suzanne. And I'd also like to spare a word for two of my fellow countrymen, Graham Hancock and Rupert Sheldrake, who, I think, as you all know, had their talks taken down by TED because they were deemed not sufficiently scientific, which, when I heard that, gave me a great deal of consternation because, as you may know, Rupert Sheldrake is a biochemist from Cambridge University, which is one of the greatest scientific universities in the world. And my only connection with Cambridge is I was born there. And my last brush with science was over 30 years ago at school in England, when we had to take various exams called O-levels. And anything between 1 and 6 meant that you'd passed. 7, 8, and 9 were all varying degrees of failure. And I remember, well, I gave up biology because I knew I didn't have a chance to concentrate on chemistry and physics. And when the results came back, for chemistry I had 9, which was the bottom grade. But for physics I had U. And I didn't know what U was because nobody had said anything about U. And I even began to think, maybe I've passed this thing, to see at the bottom of the page that U stood for unclassified. It was so bad that I simply couldn't. Thank you very much. They couldn't even mark it. But thankfully, I'm allowed at least to quote actual scientists and refer to them, including particularly good ones like the late Nobel laureate Albert Einstein, who is believed to have said, let's put it like that, is believed to have said, and he certainly said it as far as I'm concerned, is that you cannot solve a problem with the same level of consciousness which created the problem in the first place. And I think for all of us, certainly all of those of us who are here today, and hopefully those who will follow this, and those who don't go along with the presentation that's being put forward by TED, or the argument solely put forward by TED, is that our world is filled with problems, much like the bumper sticker, which says if you're not appalled, you haven't been paying attention. We're facing massive problems, from unsustainable population growth, an outdated and fundamentally flawed economic system that is based far more on competition and profit and greed rather than sustainability and cooperation for everybody so that everybody has a chance in this world. And all of this against rapid and dramatic climate change that's having a profound effect upon all of our lives, set against a political backdrop of instability in a nuclear-armed world in which the natives are not too surprisingly becoming increasingly restless. And I think that if we were to trace back every single one of our problems, and including all the myriad of social challenges that we face, the tragedy of our society in so many different ways, I think we could trace it all back to one simple cause. And I think the same simple single cause is also the solution to our future, to this great new paradigm that we're going through. And that is through a proper understanding of who and what we are. Who we really are. And I think this was so well summed up by a wonderful human being who I also think probably would have been banned and blacklisted by TED, the great philosopher Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who, as I say, I think he summed it up so well when he said, "The trouble with the world is that we have lost our consciousness of God." And I think what he meant by that is we've lost our sense of place. We've lost our sense of awe at this incredible, unbelievable mystery, this divine mystery, if you like, this miracle that we all share called life. Where is it from? And for why? And for where is it all going? And I think to that extent, for all the advances that have been made in recent centuries, and particularly recent decades, in science and technology, it was Albert Einstein again who pointed out, no doubt after a great deal of scratching on his chalkboard and chewing on the end of this pencil and whatever else it is that scientists do, that you cannot have science, or science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. But the trouble is, for all these advances that we have made, our world's great religions date back to a time when we believed that the world was flat and that we were the center of the universe. And to give credit where credit is due with science and technology, they've taken us now to the furthest reaches of the universe. They've allowed us to put ourselves into perspective. And I think as we go forward into this new paradigm, instead of thinking of ourselves as Jew, or primarily thinking of ourselves as Jew, or Sunni, or Shia, or Christian, or Hindu, or Buddhist, or atheist, or any other of the myriad ways in which we differentiate ourselves, we should see ourselves in the way that of astronomer Carl Sagan put it. He said, in asking, "Who are we?" he said, "We find that we live on an insignificant planet of a humdrum star lost in a galaxy. It tucked away in a corner of the universe in which there are far more galaxies than people." And I think we need to rekindle that consciousness of what we really are a part of, this gift that we all share called life. And it's not as though we're not being prompted from beyond ourselves to gain a greater appreciation of this far greater reality of which we're all a part. For example, in the wonderful, no pun intended, field of crop circles, which Suzanne has done so much to bring to the attention of the world, and which she explained earlier, how a recognition of these incredible formations that are showing up each year with greater and greater complexity, greater beauty, greater profundity. And for anybody who has researched crop circles, it's clearly evident that the vast majority of them are not being made by human beings. And it should be at the very forefront of human investigation. And we should also listen to people like Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, who has openly stated that we all know UFOs exist. All we need to ask is, where are they from? And before him, Gordon Cooper, who testified in the 1960s at the United Nations, saying, "We know that our government is sitting on hard evidence of UFOs." And before that, in the Second World War, there was a wonderful sighting by a Royal Air Force crew that was immediately classified by Winston Churchill in collaboration with Dwight Eisenhower, because it is believed, he has said at the time, it would cause mass panic amongst the people and a disbelief in the church. And I'm not here to cause a disbelief in the church. I'm a member of the Cloth, and I'm going to shortly introduce a wonderful member from the Cloth. But I think we need to re-examine our spirituality and our scriptures in the light of what we now know. Because what was the Star of Bethlehem? And I can tell you with my limited knowledge of physics that it was not a star, because stars are suns. They do not hover over stables any more than people go up in clouds. And what did Jesus mean in John 14, verse 2, when he said, "In my Father's house there are many mansions"? And what did the Buddha mean in the Flower Adornment Sutra, when he said, "The universe is filled with intelligent life on innumerable planets. And what did the late Dr. Raghavan, professor of Sanskrit at Madras University, mean when he said, after 50 years of investigating these sacred texts, the Vedas, I am convinced that we have been visited by extraterrestrials since at least 4000 BC. Now, to bring this up to date more, and where I come into this, because I was curious about all of these things several years ago. And in the 1980s, I came across the teachings and the work of the late Dr. George King, who was born in England in 1919. When the Second World War came around in 1939, he was a conscientious objector, but nonetheless he recognized the need to serve, and he became a section leader in London's fire service during the devastating bombing of the Blitz, and he saw the great inhumanity of man to man. Why are we doing this to each other? In a war which culminated in the explosion of 2 atom bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Why? The insanity of all of this. And it caused him to study the ancient science of yoga. And I say that deliberately to Ted. The ancient science of yoga, with an intensity and a discipline which is rare in any age, for up to 8 hours a day over a 10-year period. And it caused a force that we all have in the base of the spine called the Kundalini, to rise through the Sushumna channel and open the chakras, the psychic centers that we all have in our body. And it enabled him to go into the highest states of consciousness known to mankind on this earth, called samadhi. And he, with this ability, with this remarkable ability that we all have, in 1954, he was contacted, and this was during the height of the Cold War. When flying saucers were very commonly seen, he was contacted by an extraterrestrial source, using in part telepathy, that's been discussed in this conference. And he took in all over 600 transmissions, what we call cosmic transmissions, from these extraterrestrial intelligence, these masters from other dimensions of existence within, not just this, well, primarily from within our own solar system. And I want to share, well, I maybe share in a moment, but what I do want to do is I want to answer those people, those skeptics, those atheists, those material scientists who would regard all of this as quackery and woo, which is their term. Because 4 years after that, in 1958, our material scientists, together with our politicians, tested not 1, not 2, not 5 or 10, but no less than 1,600 hydrogen and atom bombs, the equivalent of those dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1 year in 1958. And if that wasn't insane and mad and criminal enough, 4 years later in 1962, they tested, what a strange word, they tested no less than 12,000 atom bombs and hydrogen bombs, the equivalent of those dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1 year. And so to come back, I just want to, in terms of ideas worth spreading, which is supposedly what this is all about, the ideas worth spreading is, what is our real purpose? Who are we really? What are we really all about? The idea is that we're here to evolve, to advance, to emerge into more and more of this incredible universe which we all share, which we're a part of, and understanding what Jesus meant in John 14, verse 12, when he said, "Greater things than I have done, you will do." We need to get this kind of understanding into our philosophy of who and what we really are. And the two things that I want to share that came through Dr. King. One is when terrestrial man begins to realize his true position in the cosmos, he will then begin to manifest this great energy of love. And the other thing is this great paradigm change that we're all going through is not so much about us as it is about the planet upon which we live, as a living, conscious being going herself through evolution back to the source from which we all came. And in closing, and I hope I haven't too much over my time. But what is the alternative to that? What is the alternative to not really understanding who and what we really are? And I think that's given in Proverbs 29, verse 18, which says, where there is no vision, where there is no understanding of who and what we really are, the people perish. Thank you. All right.
I'll just say a word. I think he did me very well. I don't know the Bible verses, however. He did me a little better there.